Definitely not. Will cares crazy.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs, the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast, Right Toast, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. I believe this big boy turns 10 this year. I mean, I guess next year, technically. Such a big boy. This is the kind of pet that, like... Okay, I need to phrase this in the right way, because, like, it's always sad when a pet dies, right? Like, I've been distraught and broken up every time a pet has died. But this is, like... Mark is, like... the first pet that I was around for his birth, you know? And, like, he's been with me his entire life. He is going to ruin me when he's gone, you know? Not to start off on a really sad note, but I think back to, I don't know if it was a Vine or a TikTok, but it's just someone laying in bed with a cat on their chest and they're playing with them. And it's just that, literally, like, they're just playing with them. And then there's that moment of silence, and then just, you're gonna ruin me when you die. That's gonna be this boy. Pretty much all three of my cats. All three of my cats, I've been there for. Not, like, their birth, but, like, I had either adopted them or a friend has given them to me within the first, like, 6 months of their life, you know? So, I don't know. It was just on my mind, and I was gonna be thinking about it until I said it. We're going to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, not depressing pet stuff. He's perfectly healthy as far as I'm aware. You know, not knock on wood. No issues that I can think of, just, you know, the passage of time. Anyway, today I kind of wanted to talk about, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but for the past, like, 2 months, I've kind of been using the podcast as, like, my brainstorming session for videos. So, like, you'll see a podcast and then, like, a week or two later, you'll see a video on a similar topic. I hope that's not redundant for some of you, but regardless, it kind of helps me to think out these theories in media res and plan them in a way. And today's kind of, it's less of me brainstorming a theory I want to do, and it's more so, wow, this shadow is really distracting. It's more so like testing the waters to see if there's enough meat to make this a full video. Ow. Mark, careful with your claws. Motherfucker, that hurt. He didn't, like, purposely scratch me, but I adjusted, and I moved my hand as he was, like, slipping, and it was just a bad timing. But that got, like, my pointer and my thumb. Yikes. But the theory in question is, okay, here's the pitch. I think the past year and next year of FNAF is Scott Cawthon bringing back the FNAF 4 Bullies to show karma biting them in the ass. That's kind of the pitch, the elevator pitch, if you will. I don't think, like, William is coming back to exact revenge on the bullies that led to the death of his son. I don't think William gave a shit about his kids, to be honest. Frankly, William is a crazy psychopath who probably saw his children as, like, test subjects more than flesh and blood. And I think that's epitomized with how he treats Michael, or how it seems that he treats Michael. Again, we don't have a lot of evidence on how William treats his kids in the games, but judging by the books and the movies and all that, and, like, the kind of person we know William to be, not a good dad. Definitely not. Will cares crazy. I do think he gets angry at those who cause his children to die, but I don't think it's that, like, parental, like, righteous fury of, how dare you snuff out the life that I had created, who was my world, and you've darkened it, so on and so forth. I don't think it's that. I think it's, that was a perfectly good test subject and you've ruined it. Like, that's legitimately what I think William's thought process there is, regardless. So because of that, I don't think William's going and, like, hunting down the bullies who, like, killed his youngest son. I don't think that at all. I think it's more of Scott as, like, a writer is definitely down with karma, Like that's kind of a recurring theme through almost all the short stories is like people who do bad things have bad things done to them. That's in like 80% of the short stories. Well, now, is it proportional? No. And I think that's kind of part of the horror is like, oh, but I don't deserve this. It's like, you don't deserve this, but it's happening to you anyway because of what you've done. Um, ah, but, so I think that being said, the FNAF 4 bullies, we're kind of getting like, I think we're getting vignettes into their lives and like the way that the universe kind of pays them back for what they had done. So, what do I mean by that? Well, not all of the people who bullied Dave Afton, and yes, I'm going to be calling the crying child Dave until proven otherwise. I don't think all the people who were bullying Dave Afton are getting comeuppance, right? Because if you look at the FNAF 4 minigames, pretty much everybody was clowning on this kid. Every random kid on the street was like, hey, you're that loser, right? So, like, not all of them are being punished by the universe. But I definitely think I definitely think like the main four are that being Michael and his three friends, the ones wearing the Freddy's masks who put the crying child in the mouth of Fredbear. Like those four teenagers, I think are the ones being punished by the universe years later. The immediate thing I can hear a lot of people wondering about is like, is this possible timeline wise? Because after all, the crying child was bit in 1983. And these games are taking place in the 2000s and later, so like how old are these people getting like their comeuppance, if you will? Well, their ages are unclear, so immediately that proves to be an issue. Like we know that the event happened in 1983, but all we have to guess on like the ages of these characters are these very like low bit sprites that we're just kind of guessing with. That being said, I don't see okay, later. That being said, I don't see them being too old, right? Because like Michael Afton is spending his days wearing a Foxy mask and jump scaring his younger brother. That's not 25-year-old behavior. If it is, he needs to go to a psych ward. That's crazy. But like, I see if I had to take like just a stab in the dark. Oh my god, I know I'm wearing a black shirt, but that is crazy. Do I even have a lint roller around here? I think my lint roller's upstairs, so I guess you just get cat fur. When is this going up? Is this going up? Yeah, you know what? So Friday is the big announcement, and I'm recording and editing a separate video specifically for the announcement on Friday because it goes live, but I might as well start building hype 3 days before it's live. Folks, huge announcement to interrupt my train of thought because I'm like, I want something to hold. Back in August, I guess early September, late August, we did a makeshift campaign to get 200 petitions to make a plushie real, specifically the plushie of Toast, the mascot of the channels, who's been personified, and they are kind of the main figurehead behind the second channel, and they show up in all the thumbnails. But speaking of Toast, I wanted to celebrate that, make this plushie. And people have also been asking for like more merch. I don't really have merch, so I'm like, sure, let's go for it. And y'all knocked it out of the park. We got 300 pre-orders, which is crazy. Or like 300 like pledges, which is like the $2 pledge that turns into an order when the thing goes live. And originally, I had said that the campaign would go live in December. But after the pledge was finished, we started back and forthing with the design, and the first design they sent was perfect. And then they sent me the prototype and I loved it. So they said, well, since that's done, the 3-month window to December was kind of just the estimate for how long it takes to nail down a design. Because you liked the first one, we can go live whenever. And I was like, okay, well, how about October? So October 18th at 2 p.m., they will be real. Look at how now I will say they're a thick boy, but Makeshift did explain to me, and I think it was on the page, that like to sit properly, they need to be a thick boy. But look at this Little bread motherfucker. You kind of gotta massage them to get them to maintain that toast shape. That's kind of just how like plushies work, unfortunately. Can't really have like the really defined lines here. Um, but not only are they pretty much exactly the concept art, which I'm really happy about. There's something that I don't know if I mentioned on the product page that I really wanted to do, and they did it awesome. Um, you can be a happy toast, or you can be a dazed and confused toast. There's two faces. You can position them however you want to get both emotions. I love how this little guy came out. I don't know if I rest them on my lap, they're out of frame. So I'm just gonna, for at least this, I'm just gonna look at that motherfucker. Um I love how this guy came out. And like I said, the 18th at 2 p.m. will be the live date. The page is already live, but you can't pre-order. Essentially, everyone who put down a pledge, like you already have yours. But anyone who wasn't able to pledge or didn't want to or wanted to see the final product, you'll have 3 weeks to pre-order this little motherfucker. And I'm really happy with how they came out. The official announcement with like the fancy video that I'm making and all that will be Friday. But it goes live in 3 days. I might as well start talking about it, start building up that hype. That being said, I guess I'll adjust. I'm just going to move up. So the toast is actually visible. But now I've got someone to hold. Man. Being allergic to cats and having cats sucks. Because, like, you take enough Zyrtec, the fur stops bothering you. But when they cut your, like, knuckles, your hands get itchy. My hands are so itchy. If you see me like doing this, it's because my knuckles are itchy. But I definitely, so going back to what we were talking about the ages of the bullies in FNAF 4. And I really do think that those bullies, my best guess is anywhere from like 12 to 16, maybe to be generous, we'll say 12 to 18. Literally teenager, like the range of teenager. They're anywhere from 12 to 18. Would that then make it impossible? I say no. This is a slight spoiler, and we'll get into it. But one of the parents, I think, ends up the protagonist of Help Wanted 2, and we'll get there. But Help Wanted 2 takes place around Security Breach, so that's anywhere. Like, we don't have a confirmed date for Security Breach. We have some pretty well-evidenced arguments, but Security Breach definitely takes place somewhere between 2030 and 2040, like somewhere in that range. Like, I mean, you could argue 2020, but I think 2030 to 2040 makes more sense. Regardless, at most, like 2040. So giving the biggest estimate, right, saying that all of the teenagers were 18 in 1983 and one of them lived all the way to 2040, is that impossible? Well, that would make that one specific bully 75. And so, like, that's old. But that's also the, like, oldest estimate we can get. We can also get, like, 59, which is much more reasonable. All this to say, I don't think the ages are a good argument here. So that being said, what do we know about the bullies? Well, the only one we have, like, I don't think it's technically confirmed, but as confirmed as things can get in this franchise, Michael is the Foxy bro, right? Michael Afton is the older brother to Dave, wears the Foxy mask, and is one of the instigators of bullying for his younger brother. And then as far as like, how did karma get Michael? The whole FNAF franchise, right? Like, it definitely gives the vibe of Michael Afton as this tragic hero of, as a kid, you did something really stupid and you pretty much caused the death of your youngest brother. And for the rest of your life, you're kind of, not only, but one of your motivations now is, I need to make this right by Dave, right? And that is a very compelling motivation for a protagonist. So that immediately, right? And then you can then ascribe all the bad things that happened to Michael, not necessarily directly because of William, to karma biting Michael in the ass. But what about the others, right? Like, we all knew Michael Afton was the Foxy Bro. At least all of us think that. What about the others? Well, I am nowhere near the first person to say this, but I think the protagonist of Help Wanted 2 not only is Cassie's dad, but also the Bonnie bully. That being the one wearing the Bonnie mask, because at the end of Help Wanted 2, right, we go through the Princess Quest ending. And in there, if you light the graves in the correct order, you get to go to the secret chest that has a Bonnie mask that literally says it. I think it says something along the lines of, "It seems familiar," or "This seems familiar." ... And it is worth noting. I've seen some people say like maybe it's the MXES mask or like a metaphor for that, which I understand that. Um, some people saying that it could be anything. I think it's important to note context for these clues. And when the Bonnie mask that seems familiar isn't directly tied to anything, but is technically the final secret puzzle you can do in the game, I think that's meaningful. I think that is drawing a lot of attention to this, saying this is very important, right? And we know for a fact that Cassie's dad is a mega fan of Fazbear's. Bonnie was, and even Cassie's like, Bonnie was his favorite. He always collects so many, like he's been collecting so many Fazbear things for a long time. And then we go to Help Wanted 2, where who I think is Cassie's dad has a familiar looking Bonnie mask. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then the idea of like, okay, you led to the death of the crying child, and throughout the rest of your life, you're living with that guilt. And finally, karma gets you by you experiencing Help Wanted 2 and essentially dying, right? Like, because I think pretty much every ending of Help Wanted 2, our protagonist is dead. It doesn't look good for our protagonist in Help Wanted 2. It's kind of like Ruin, where every ending of Ruin, even though there's 3 different ones, Cassie's trapped in the basement and the mimic is MIA in every single Ruin ending. So it is interesting that Help Wanted 2 also does the same thing where, like, yes, we have 2 endings, but in both of those endings, the Help Wanted 2 protagonist is dead and there's an active threat left alive. Which active threat definitely changes, but you know, it's interesting to note. So that would be then the Bonnie bully. It's like, okay, so we have Foxy, Bonnie, who's next? This is, I guess, a bit more controversial, but I think this fandom is like kind of 50-50 on this one, and it's Oswald's dad. So Into the Pit, one of the collectibles you can get, and you can even use it to trade for a necessary item. It's not the only one that works. You can also go to the arcade and get an old gaming console, like a handheld, and that also allows you to trade for the necessary item. But one of the things you can trade is an old Freddy mask that falls out of your attic, where like all of your old stuff is kept. And I don't remember exactly what Oswald said, but Oswald says something along the lines of like, I've just realized now that like, I think me hitting the desk is moving the microphone. I hope that's not audibly picked up, but I'll back up a little so that doesn't keep happening. Something along the lines of like, this is old, who would want this? So I think it is notable, right, that Oswald's dad, someone we know from the book, has knowledge of Freddy's and like knows about the missing child incident. So like he went there all the time. Well, scratch. That was an overstep. He said he used to go there all the time, and also we know he knows about the missing child incident, right? So we can assume that as a kid he was going to these locations. Him being the Freddy mask bully is not a huge stretch, right? Mr. Child's incident happened in 85. So was he going to Fredbear's in 83? Totally possible. And then that being said, his karmic comeuppance, if you will, would be being attacked by Pit Bonnie and possibly dying if not for Oswald saving him. So once again, like we have Freddy, we knew about Foxy, Michael, then we learn about the Bonnie bully and the misfortunes that he has to go through from karma. And now we see the Freddy bully and the misfortunes he has to go through from karma. Now, is this speculation? 100%. But I'm placing my bet. Probably not Secret of the Mimic, which seems like it's going to be a game that takes place very long ago. Unless this is like we're exploring a dilapidated warehouse and we're discovering the past through what we find. If that's true, totally possible then. But I think Secret of the Mimic is going to take place in 1979, not just about what happened in 1979. So whatever the next FNAF game is that it takes place in like past the 2000s, I think we're going to finally meet our Chica Bully. Or I think more accurately what I'm saying here, if we see an old Chica mask associated with a adult character in the next game or two, I'm going to say this theory is as good as confirmed. Because like that's essentially 3 games in a row where we get an old Freddy's mask associated with an adult character. And like that lines up so well with showing us, hey, here are the FNAF 4 bullies, and here's the karma they're experiencing because of the things they did, right? And it's one of those things where, like, why, right? Why are we getting this now? What does this change in the timeline? Realistically, nothing. But I think it goes back to a recurring thing that's been happening since Help Wanted, realistically. Honestly, since Ultimate Custom Night. It seems like Scott Cawthon, as a writer, is trying to move on to different stories and tell new stories. And to do that, I think he's going back and tying up as many loose ends as he can to clear the slate and tell these new stories. Scott Cawthon loves science fiction. That is not news. If you've seen The Desolate Hope or his, like, I think his favorite movie is The Alien. And Tom's been posting a lot about how, like, a lot of FNAF is directly inspired from the Alien movies. So like Scott loves science fiction. And I think now the video I'm talking about, I think doesn't come out for like, does it come out this week or next week? It doesn't come out for a week or two, but I'm putting out a video about how like, I think maybe the Blob in Security Breach is possessed. I think the Blob is possessed with agony. But as far as like everything else in Security Breach and Ruin and Help Wanted 2, I don't think there's any ghosts anymore. I really don't. I think it is all AI becoming sentient, and what does that mean? Which is really cool and a fun new concept to explore in this franchise. And I think that's the direction Scott wants to go for at least this Security Breach era of games. And I think part of that is wrapping up a lot of these and like tying up a lot of these loose ends from the beginning of the franchise and the older games. So part of that I think goes into the FNAF 4 bully idea. The idea of like, did we need to know this? No. But it is a nice bow to leave on the FNAF 4 story to be like, and here's where they are now, you know? We know what happened to Michael, we know what happens to Dave, and we kind of know what happened to Freddy and Bonnie Bully. I think so anyway. So seeing what happens to the Chica Bully would kind of cement that in my mind. And then once again, that's another loose end that's been tied up to move on to newer stories. And I do genuinely think that's where FNAF is going. And I'm excited to see it. Do I want ghosts to be out of the franchise forever? Hell no. I love ghosts. They're spooky. But I do think the current new story being told is all AI. It is not spirits. It is robotics. And I'm interested to see where that goes. Right? It's the idea of like a digital ghost. What is a corrupted AI program trying to recreate William Afton, but essentially a digital ghost of Afton's will? That's badass. I'm excited to see it. I feel like that was kind of short for the topic. Maybe this will be a full video. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough meat to reach that like 10-15 minute mark that I like theories to be. But we'll see. However, this is a podcast. We got more shit to talk about. So let's go on to questions. If you want your questions answered in the podcast, feel free to send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. You have to do it on email. You cannot do it on Spotify because they took away the Q&A feature, unfortunately. That being said, to my Spotify listeners, how's it going? It's been a while. Sorry. I forgot to upload to Spotify for like a month. And because of that, I didn't upload anywhere but YouTube for a month. A little peek behind the curtain, the way podcasts work. Most of the time you upload it one place and then you get an RSS feed that you can upload to other places. I prioritize YouTube. It's my main source of income. So I'm always going to upload there first and separately. That being said, I have to then upload it to Spotify, which will give me the RSS feed that will automatically upload it to like Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, like all the other sites. So I forego to upload to Spotify for 4 episodes straight. Oops. But by the time you're listening to this, all the ones have been uploaded, and I'll do my best to be better at that. We're currently working on like really structuring out a schedule for me so I don't forget to do things or have things go through late. And hopefully that will be part of it. But just wanted to put that out there. Again, if you want your questions or theories talked about on the podcast, send it into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. Our first question comes from Kit, they, them. There seems to be a lot of stories that have themes of people turning into animatronics. An example, To Be Beautiful, Nexi, Frailty, and possibly Animatronic Apocalypse. What do you think this could mean? Also probably the weirdest part is that all of these books, and as far as I'm aware, there is no themes even similar to this in the games. What do you think this could mean, if anything? It is interesting, right? Thank you for your question. The idea that, like, as far as we're aware right now, there's no solid evidence, I would say, of a person turning into an animatronic in the games. Now, I think there's something you could make an argument for, and we'll get there. But before we get there, we should talk about the books, because you're right. In the books, there's a lot of examples of people and animatronics crossing that boundary. Either animatronics trying to become people, which is in the games to a point, or people becoming animatronics. You list To Be Beautiful, which not quite, but I see the idea of like a body being replaced. But Nexi is definitely a better example, right? Nexi taking the skin of the girl that's taking care of her and putting it on to become a person. Animatronic Apocalypse, was that an agony monster? Was it an animatronic pretending to be a human? Who knows? It's Animatronic Apocalypse is one of my least favorite stories, and also one of the weirdest. I don't know why Fazgoo gets so much shit, whereas Animatronic Apocalypse gets to exist without, like, uncritically. But right, we have like B7, which again, that's person becoming an animatronic. But there is this recurring theme in a lot of the short stories, and to an extent the novel trilogy, of animatronics trying to become people and people trying to become animatronics. So do we see that in game? I would say we do see Glitchtrap or the Mimic One program trying to become physical, and to an extent a person. I would argue Vanny and GGY to an extent are extensions of this idea. I'm not saying that Vanny or GGY are animatronics, but what I'm saying is, if the Mimic One program is taking over chunks of the minds of Vanessa and Gregory, if you have a human whose mind is taken over by an AI program, what is that but an animatronic becoming human, right? And then look at Sister Location. Sister Location, the ending of it, is essentially the ending of Nexi, where an animatronic is taking a human, emptying out their insides, and wearing their skin, becoming an animatronic. So like becoming a human animatronic. So this is something that is showing up in games. And it does kind of go back to what I mentioned earlier about, like, Scott really likes science fiction, and this just seems like something that's really interesting. But I think it's less of a, is this an ultimate goal thing? And I think it's a natural extension to the overarching theme of Five Nights at Freddy's. Right? The overarching theme of Five Nights at Freddy's has, in my opinion, always been life. And like, what is life? And the pursuit of living over all things, right? William Afton as a villain is pursuing immortality. And our animatronics, which are attacking us, and the antagonists, are in essence immortality. Because we've talked so far about animatronics trying to become people, and animatronics take over the minds of people to become people. But if a person's soul and consciousness is inputted into an animatronic, is that not a form of immortality? And that seems to be what William Afton is ultimately chasing after, right? Like with Springtrap, I often forget that Springtrap is not an undead version of William Afton. Springtrap is a Spring Bonnie suit with a human corpse inside that is being possessed by the spirit of William Afton, like any of the other animatronics, right? Like Freddy is an animatronic with a body inside of it being possessed by Gabriel's spirit. Springtrap is an animatronic with a body inside it being possessed by William Afton's spirit. They are one in the same. It just Springtrap seems more like an undead creature because we see more of the body. So Five Nights at Freddy's has always been the pursuit of immortality in relation to the spirit and the machine. The idea kind of going into that, I haven't played it yet, but I've seen so many memes from the new like Space Marine game where it's like when I recognized the weakness of flesh, it disgusted me and I craved the like I haven't played the game. It was like I craved the like no ability of machine or whatever the line is. That line is like the epitome of FNAF, or at least the epitome of William Afton being disgusted with the idea of death and going to hell, right? I love the idea, the recurring theme of William being terrified of hell, knowing he will go to hell if he dies. So his solution is to not die. So I guess to circle back to your question specifically, you're right to point out that there is a recurring theme of animatronics trying to become people, but I think it's less that animatronics really want to be people, and it's more so that FNAF has always played with the idea of what life is. And it's logical that if your story is going to focus on people becoming machines to stay alive forever, what about the reverse, where machines try to become people? And that kind of goes back to what Security Breach is doing. The idea of like Glamrock Freddy and the Mimic One program, I don't think are possessed. I think they are robots that are becoming sentient. And now we get to play around in this aspect of life. Is life just consciousness? Because you can argue, well, they're just machines that are doing programs. What is our brain besides that? Right? It's that interesting concept that can be explored in this space. So I really enjoy that. And I do. So I guess I hope that answers your question. But it is a really fun concept that I don't think we acknowledge enough. That like Five Nights at Freddy's, we like to talk about the spookiness and the animatronics are gonna kill you. But like it's fun to talk about the like the literary analysis of this franchise and what its core themes are. And the core theme really is, what is life and how can you achieve it? But thank you for your question. I just realized, I feel like you guys are smart enough that I shouldn't have to say this, but I do want to say this real quick before I move on. I've been saying AI a lot in this video. I'm talking about the fictional version of artificial intelligence, the idea of like a mind replicated in a digital space. I shouldn't need to say this. Generative AI is a curse on this planet. It is killing our environment. It is stealing every creative work we've ever made, and I hope that it is legislated to dirt. Generative AI has done nothing good for us. And I hear some of you being like, oh, well, AI is good. Separate. AI, as we currently know it, pretty much can be defined as literally any kind of a program. And that is true to an extent. I think like there are good uses of AI, but generative AI, specifically visual generative AI and text generative AI, literally only exist to do art theft for people who are too lazy to learn art. That is the only thing they exist for. And every time you do a funny haha chat GPT prompt, you consume 20 gallons of water worth of energy. So stop fucking doing it, even for memes, because you're killing the fucking planet at the fastest rate we've ever known. Just wanted to put that out there. And I really fucking hate generative AI. Anyway, our next question comes from Moland. Him. In your previous episode, you mentioned that you feel the Puppet and Balloon Boy are hand-me-downs from Circus Baby's Pizza World. I think it's more than that. I believe that the building itself in FNAF 2 is Circus Baby's Pizza World, based on Baby's description of the place from her monologue of when she killed Elizabeth. Thank you for your question. Back. There's been like an hour between recordings. A lot of stuff happened. Don't worry about it. Anyway, I believe I just read the question. So it is interesting. I brought this up not really because I have anything to necessarily disprove it, but it's a really compelling theory, in my opinion. The idea of like, because FNAF 2 has always been the weird one, where we have Fredbears and then Freddy's, both of those close, And then FNAF 1 opens, presumably in the Freddy's location, a long time after the fact. But in the middle, we had the FNAF 2 location out of nowhere that was the most different one. So the idea of this company that reuses everything, reusing Circus Baby's Pizza World to just make Freddy's again, but in this different location, I don't hate that. And that could explain why Balloon Boy and the puppet are there. The idea of like, it's not, oh, let's dig through our supply and see what animatronics we have left over. It's, oh, let's reopen this building. What's that? There's a puppet and a Balloon Boy in there? Sure, they're part of the gang now. Right? Like, I kind of actually really dig that. So I bring this up not necessarily to gather evidence for it, but kind of to put a prompt out to y'all. Is there anything that could like solidly disprove this? Because as of recording, I couldn't think of anything, and I don't know what to research to figure that out. So I would love to see what y'all think about it. Because remember, Circus Baby Party and Rental, the bunker, that's the thing that is we have more information on, like where it is, what it's doing. Circus Baby's Pizza World never actually opened. It was supposed to open the day before. It was closed because Circus Baby killed Elizabeth Afton. So it never actually opened. So we don't have a lot of information on the building itself. But no, that's a really interesting thought, and I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on it in the comments below. But but thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Chris, he, him. Do you have a theory as to why Gregory would choose to hide in Freddy's chest cavity, as opposed to just leaving the Pizzaplex with the other guests leaving the concert? Do you think it was possible that he knew that Freddy would be safe to hide in? Thanks. Yeah, so what I think there's a couple things that go into this, and this kind of goes into the GGY territory. My thinking for the reason Security Breach starts is Gregory breaks away from Glitchtrap's control for some reason. And before he's able to leave the Pizzaplex, the Mimic One program essentially was like, hey, y'all, get him. And then Freddy spots him in the crowd, presumably as he's going to leave. And then, you know, Freddy has that freak out on stage. We cut to the later that night when Freddy is rebooted. I think it is, I think the reason Freddy freaks out in the first place is a conflict of interest. So, Gregory, as GGY, has manipulated the code of all the animatronics specifically to protect Gregory. We get examples of this in the story GGY where we know the code has been changed and G's and Y's are left all over the place. And we know that while, what is his name? Main character from GGY who's investigating, while he's investigating it, Glamrock Freddy is like staring daggers at him the whole time. Glamrock Freddy is acting almost like a protector for Gregory. And I think that's on purpose. I think the idea was Glitchtrap had this idea of like, oh, I should make the Ace animatronics protect this like small boy puppet I have so that if he gets into trouble, they can make sure he's all right. So I can have this puppet for later. And then the Mimic One program didn't foresee the issue here where Gregory breaks away and it's like, okay, new directive, find and capture Gregory. Freddy sees Gregory in the crowd. And now we have our core programming is protect Gregory. And our new directive is attack Gregory. Those conflict, we short, we collapse. I think that makes a lot of sense. As to why Gregory gets in Freddy's chest cavity, I had been operating under the idea that Freddy essentially isn't sure what's going on. Or sorry, not Freddy. Gregory isn't sure what's going on. That like maybe by the end of the game, his memories are coming back. But like at the start of the game, he just snapped out of it. He's not sure where he is. He's lost and confused. Start. So that conflicts with what I was going to say, which is Gregory, knowing Freddy is programmed to protect him, hides in his chest cavity. We don't know that. I don't think Gregory would know that in this moment. So there is still that really interesting question of like, okay, why was Gregory in Freddy's chest cavity? There is another option here. What if Gregory was in there the whole time? Or at least during that performance, and Freddy short circuits because mid-performance, he recognizes Gregory is in there. And then Freddy has that safe mode reboot. What if Gregory does too in that moment? And they're both kind of like coming to at the same moment. I think that's possible. And then the whole thing of like Gregory being scared is like once Freddy starts like looking around and stuff, he can be like, "Oh, Freddy, I'm in here. Please let me out." Um, that's possible too, because Gregory clearly can go inside of Freddy and pilot Freddy from within, essentially. So the idea of GGY piloting Glamrock Freddy to do certain tasks does make sense, and it's something we know is possible. So I could see that GGY was maybe piloting Glamrock Freddy, and then a core program overrides, it's showtime, we have to go do showtime, while GGY is in there. And that is the breaking point for Glamrock Freddy to reset soft reboot, GGY resets soft reboot, and now we have these two previously controlled victims now breaking free. I think that's also really compelling. We don't have a lot of evidence for it, but it is one of the few explanations I can think of as to why Gregory would be in Glamrock Freddy at the start of the game. But that's just my idea. That's just an idea. We don't really have a good, clear reason. But thank you for your question. I actually never thought of that before, like that explanation of him already being in there. So you kind of helped me to that with that question. So thank you for that. And our last question comes from Tech, she, they. Since The Secret of the Mimic is a prequel to all of the games, do you think we will see MXES being made, or the maker, in the game? Do you think MXES could be more of a controlled version of Shadow Bonnie? Thank you for your question. The second one, I'm going to be super honest, no. I think Shadow Bonnie is a manifestation of agony. I think MXES is an entity that is representative of the program being run by the MXES console. So what is that entity? I don't know. But it is worth noting that MXES is incredibly old. The machine is very aged. It's styled like the technology of the like 70s, 80s, 90s. It looks straight up like the machine from War Machine, or from War Games, which is a movie about that kind of like 70s, 80s, 90s technology. So like it makes a lot of sense to be that old piece of technology with the Mimic. So I do think the MXES machine goes back to the Mimic's origins. What does the MXES machine do? I don't know. I think, see, at first I thought Henry built it while doing experiments during FNAF 6. I don't think that's true anymore. Henry might have built it, but I think it was built during that Mimic time in the late 70s, early 80s. So that being said, I've heard a lot of people say it's like the Mimic something system, or like it definitely seems to be related to the Mimic in that way. So the secret of the Mimic does make sense to happen in this moment. I really don't know. I think my best guess right now is it was literally built to contain the Mimic program. But like why? I don't know. Because theoretically, you don't need to contain the Mimic program at that time. It's just like, oh, that's the Mimic program. We just made it. Seems like a overstep of caution. So I'm curious as to find out the reason why the MXES machine was made, and frankly, what the MXES machine even specifically does. I do think, however, the entity is a modified version of the MXES machine. I think the original MXES machine does something slightly different. I think Cassie's dad, before and during Help Wanted 2, modifies the MXES machine to better hide the Mimic. That's my thought process on that. And the reason it looks like Bonnie is because Cassie's dad likes Bonnie. It's his favorite. Like that's literally the thought process there. But I think the MXES machine already existed, but Cassie's dad was modifying it. So we'll see. I do think Secret of the Mimic will give us some more insight as to the MXES machine. Maybe it's just like a blueprint on a desk somewhere that seems very FNAF. But if so, it gives us some information. Even what the acronym means would be great at this point. Thank you for your question, Tech. Once again, if you want questions or theories talked about on the podcast, you can send them to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. It's in the description to copy and paste because it's pain to type out. Don't forget, Friday, 2 p.m., the 18th, you have 3 weeks to get Toast. Official announcement day of. It's double-sided, don't forget. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.